computer. All right, let's give it a go. Hello, I am Sarah Ryan, and I am joined today by some of my amazing, loving family. Many of you may know that a week or so ago, Liza and I started a petition with New Moral Majority, asking you, with Christian loved ones who are supporting Trump, to start meaningful conversations with them about reconsidering their support of Trump this 2020 election. It's a big, tough thing to do, and so any good conversation, we've decided as a family, needs to start with some serious ground rules. So here to introduce our ground rules is my very own family.
So I'll start. And again, I just want to preface all of this for those that this is not safe, or for any reason that you feel that you can't talk to your family yet because of a myriad of reasons. We fully understand, and also please reach out to us if there's any other way that we can help you to get to that place or provide further resources. But there are some good places to start if you're going to have a conversation that is productive with your family. And the first one is starting with an I statement, right? So if anybody's been in therapy or in any type of counseling setting, you know that it's really, really important to not generalize and use words like always or never, but to talk about specific situations and preface them with I. So when you said this, I felt this way. And that way we can target something very, very specific as opposed to making someone feel generally attacked. So if you can remember that, starting with an I statement and trying to avoid using words like always and never. Mom?
Secondly, assume a love and respect for the other person and that they have right motives. So they have come up with their own opinions about things, and you need to respect that and listen. Now,
that
Kim,
goes both ways, right, Mom?
That goes both ways. So now, Kim has a point to make.
When you're the dad of the family, you tend to be the highest authority figure. So it's really important that dads especially practice this. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Listen deeply, carefully, pensively, and ask clarifying questions, and make sure that the people in your family really feel heard, because if they feel heard, they'll feel loved, and you'll have great communication. Now back to Sarah.
Ooh, some pretty good ground rules. So to start off the conversation, we picked kind of a hot issue. We thought that this would be a good one to start with. So today we're going to be talking about racism.
And again, just to very, very obviously point out, we are all white people here. And so we want to recognize as well that white evangelicals tend to vote Republican, and that non-white and Black evangelicals tend to vote Democratic. And so right now we're talking to our own people, and very specifically to our own experiences as white folks who grew up in the church. And so we thought that, you know, all of us have been watching the news and have maybe different opinions about Black Lives Matter, or whether or not systemic racism exists, and how to manage our own white fragility. And so we thought that we would raise that as a family, because it's not always something that comes up if you don't sit at our dinner table, which it does more than others maybe.
So how many of us believe there is a racism problem in America?
Whew. Well, at least it's not outside.
So we're all in agreement about that one topic.
Good baseline.
But we don't always understand how that expresses itself in America or even in our church. And so I'd like to ask my daughters here, what do they mean by white fragility? Because I understand white privilege, and I've experienced that as I've been in India and Cambodia and on the mission field, that I'm accepted sometimes, whereas my brown friends are not. And so help me to understand that.
Thanks, Mom. A good question.
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been a journey both, for, I think for all of us, and, like many people, over this summer, I marched, and Ryan and I read books and tried to really expose ourselves to this idea. And I'll be honest, like, as, thinking about, even the book White Fragility, and reading and listening about, quote unquote white liberals, and how sometimes they can be the worst, I felt convicted, right? That and many times, and I'm an advocate, and I work in places with a lot of brown and black folks, people of color, that oftentimes that I have put myself forward before them, or assumed positions of leadership, that were not really mine to take. And I've also been unable to critique or be self-aware in those situations, and have sought validation from my friends of color that are also in those spaces. Like, sure, like, other people are racist, but I'm not racist. And I think that was the main thing that changed for me over this summer, was understanding, yes, if you think that racism is something that is individually carried by a person, that makes you evil, right? And it's really hard to consider yourself as somebody who loves Jesus and also to be racist. But I think where my thinking shifted over the summer was that I really understood that, racism is just something structural that exists. It is the ocean that we swim in, and because I swim in that ocean, I can't not get wet. And
Right.
that, furthermore, one of my old YWAM teachers used to say this on a semi-regular basis. He said, there is no more segregated time of the week than Sunday morning.
Mm.
And I think we have seen that more and more, as people of color feel less and less comfortable in their churches because of what the decisions that white Christians are making about their votes, and how they express themselves in their political opinions. So Mom, to get to your question about, like, what do I mean by white fragility? It means that it's really hard for me to accept any type of criticism or critique, or even to have a friend come forward and say, hey, what you said was insensitive, and it hurt me because it showed a racial bias. And I have, we've built all these cultural walls so that I can defend myself against that critique, right? So that my friends of color can't even come to me and tell me when they've been hurt by something that I've done.
All right.
And I think that's my, nascent beginner baby steps understanding of white fragility. And even the fact that I have been in so many social justice spaces and spent most of my adult life working with people who are non-white, and not that many people have come up to me and said, hey, I had a problem with the thing that you did, shows again that my power is here and their power is here, and they didn't feel like they could do that they could even be that honest with me. And so that's where I'm examining my own white fragility.
But to keep it going, because we don't want to make this conversation too long, Irene, I want to make sure that, Dad, you have a chance to share, because there was a story and kind of a reflection that you shared with me a couple weeks ago, and as we've been talking about this, about how you understood white fragility, white privilege, and even as kind of at the top of the pyramid as a white male and a baby boomer, your understanding historically, and then through the church as an evangelical pastor and as a missionary, you've got a lot of contexts to pull through, and I think some of your reflection was really meaningful.
Well, thanks so much, Sarah. I have a tremendous heart to really listen to the African American community and the Latino community, because I realize how much privilege has been a part of my life. I was raised by two dynamic parents who were upper middle class, who worked very hard. And on the ladder to success for my life, they started me on the middle rung. I didn't start at the bottom. I had no disadvantages I had to overcome. And so even though I worked hard for what I've achieved in my life, I started a different position. And I was born in Chicago, not far from South Chicago, where millions of African Americans did not grow up in that kind of atmosphere. They started in abject poverty. They never had the level of education or opportunity that I had. And my heart just grieves that the evangelical church at times has failed to listen. It's been more about protecting our status quo and protecting our property and protecting our rights than really hearing the hurt and the heartache of what it means to be a minority historically, persistently, and suffer injustice generation after generation. I can only imagine how much pent-up frustration and anger I would feel if I had experienced that. So if ever there was a time for us to hear the hearts of these wonderful African American and Latino people, we need to hear them in America, and the church needs to listen and honestly to repent of failing to be a champion for them, for standing up for them, advocating for them, demanding that they're treated as the masterpiece that they are truly created to be and deserve the right to be. I'm not better than anyone because I'm white, and we should really emphasize that God loves everyone and everyone is a masterpiece. Now, I feel strongly about this, you can see. So I just want the church to listen well and hear the hurt so they don't trivialize the victimization the African American and Latino community has gone through.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think one thing that has hurt me and frustrated me about the evangelical church and those supporting for Donald Trump is the response that all lives matter. And that's not an appropriate response. That is a way to excuse yourself and to posture white fragility again. It's a way of distancing and becoming so that you don't feel the discomfort of the power and the privilege that you hold, and especially what the white evangelical church has held financially, economically, societally. We haven't had to experience the same persecution and the same pain.
Right.
And to say that all lives matter is to say that there is justice for all in this world, and there isn't.
That's right. I agree with that, sir. I think it was very hurtful for us to say that in response. At this moment, all we needed to say is, you're right. Black lives matter. You're right. We're so sorry we haven't treasured you the way we've needed to.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. There's a lot more to say on the topic. I wanted to take a moment and apologize on behalf of the white evangelical church as a family. That's kind of the prototype example of it. We're sorry to all of our friends and loved ones, people of color, when we have stood up in front of you and taken the opportunity to make it about us and not about you.
Wow, yes.
We're sorry for not doing more when we had the means and the access to it. We're sorry for making the conversation about ourselves and not about your life and what you need. And we hope that this 2020 election, we start changing those things, that we start to listen to what you need. We start helping get out of the way so that you have the space to champion your voice. Thank you for the graciousness and the kindness you've showed us so far. We want to be better, and we will be better. Again, please consider signing our petition. These are difficult conversations to have. You can find more information at the new Moral Majority, and look forward to more family meetings with us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
You guys. I'll talk to you later.